As a born-again Christian, I appreciate the place of the church in my life. I would go further and say that I also appreciate the place of the church in the society. God has given wisdom to leadership in church to help them come up with different ministries to attend to special groups of people. When we think about a ministry like marriage ministry, it is a very powerful ministry. At least it's one ministry I have seen in all the churches I have been to, where the ministries are able to stand and meet the needs of the married couples. Oftentimes, married couples will be invited to attend events that have been designed by the church with specific goals and desired outcomes. We also have the youth ministry, which is also another very important ministry to have in the church. We have young people transitioning from the teenage years into young adult and into the adult age. And so they navigate through life with the help of leadership in church, different levels of leadership that would help them to make right choices, live their lives in purity, and all these desirable attributes of a Christian. Then we have the Sunday school ministry, which is really the foundation of Christianity when it comes to raising children in a Christian way. And so that is also a very important ministry to have in the churches, which I believe personally all the churches I've gone to have had that ministry going on. Now, when it comes to single parenting, we have some churches, maybe a good number of churches, that run a ministry that in most cases they would call the widows and the widowers ministry. Now, that ministry is important because the parents, like I said, are single parents, but by way of their spouses passing on. This ministry is important because we are dealing with people who have been robbed by death of their spouses of 40 years, 30 years, 20 years, 5 years, 2 years, a few months. And the pain and the shock and the devastation that death brings is so much that we thank God that the churches are able to stand with such families and support them by way of offering their services during the whole grieving experience until the funeral time. And because healing from such loss does not happen within weeks and months, some of it can spill over into years until someone is able to deal and cope with the loss. And so because of the pain and the turmoil and everything that happens, such ministries in the church are important, because then we have a group of people who are able to come together under the care of the church, encourage each other, find strength from each other. In that kind of setting, you'll find someone who lost their spouse several years has been able to deal with the pain and the loss. This person is able to hold the hand of someone else who has just started that journey, someone else who has just experienced the loss of a spouse and they are devastated. And so that sharing, coming together under the care of leadership in church, giving godly advice and helping each other is a very important fellowship to have. Now we have this other category of single parents in the church: the divorced, the separated, the ones who've gotten children out of wedlock, the ones who have experienced unfortunate attack such as rape, and they've ended up carrying a child. Now, this group of single parents tend to have a general feel that they are not quite recognized by the church or accepted by the church. Not that they'll be stopped from coming into church or anything, but there are moments when they feel either left out or like the church is mum about them, yet they are present. They cannot be wished away. They cannot be ignored, because unfortunately, very sadly, the numbers of single parented homes are growing. If you're a leader and you're listening to this and you think about your congregation and compared to what it was a few years ago, even pre-pandemic, we are just coming out of that season, even pre-pandemic, what your congregation looked like and what kind of broken homes and situations like this have come out of that experience. Or just look at what your congregation looked like 10, 15 years ago. Unfortunately, the reality is that there's a pandemic of single parented homes growing in the society, and it's not limited to one geographical area. So when you have a people in the society who are raised as Christians, continue coming to church, but have made certain mistakes in their lives that have gotten them to a place like this as single parents, and they have a feeling that they're not quite embraced by the church is quite mum about them. And I'm not trying to be controversial here. I am just sharing the experiences of a single parent and the journey. When you have someone who continues to go to church because that's how they were raised and bred, and now they have made certain mistakes, and some have continued making those mistakes, continued living in sin, and continued struggling and just getting themselves deeper and deeper into trouble. When they have the feeling that they're not quite embraced by the church, it could be argued that it is a perception thing on our part. But it also doesn't come from nowhere. I remember a few years ago talking to a certain single parent, and she had gotten a child out of wedlock, I believe, if I remember well. And she said she was a Christian, a born-again Christian. And she said, whenever I come to church and say, this is my child and I'm a single parent, the looks that I get make me feel like the Christians are looking at me and wondering, where were your morals? Like, how did you get here? Where were your morals? And so she continues to feel judged. As a Christian and as a born-again Christian, she experiences that feeling. Now, as recent as a few months ago, I talked to a certain single parent who is divorced, and she said, one time I was volunteering in the church, in the children's ministry, and someone who knows me was surprised to find me there. She actually couldn't help but say, oh, I did not know the church allows people like you, meaning the category of people in terms of her marital status. And so this feeling we get is not from thin air. It is actually based on experiences and things that we have gone through. We may not be able to talk about them because we are not trying to come off as if we are fighting for a certain space or right, but this is a general feeling. And if you're watching this as a church leader at whatever level, I would encourage you to pull in a few single dads and single moms and just have a conversation with them. Let them tell you what the general feeling is. Because I say this from a place of engaging with many single parents, working with them, being in their space, and picking this from their conversations we've had. So I say this with a lot of confidence from my own experience and other people's experiences. And truth be told, this group of single parents, this category here of the divorced and children out of wedlock and all, is quite sensitive because most of it is caused by our decision, our actions. It actually feels like we are categorized as the sinners in the society, the ones who even the church doesn't quite know how to deal with. But the challenge is we are already here. We are already existing. And unfortunately, people are still growing into single parenting. Wouldn't it be more effective to not let us be out there getting advice from wherever and talking to each other in terms of not supporting each other in the ways of God? Isn't it safer to have a cover in the church, a ministry that allows us to come together, sit under the leadership of the pastoral team, listen to messages and encouragement that is really designed for us in terms of the space that we are raising our children in, the space that we are relating in, the space that we are having other relationships in? Isn't it the safest place to come under the church, receive the rebuke that we need, receive the correction that we need, receive help in learning to forgive and choosing to forgive? Isn't it the safest place where we can come and say, here, I am struggling with this, and then get advice and godly advice on how to overcome that unforgiveness, how to overcome that bitterness and anger and betrayal, that all that emotion, so that we are better people, so that we are better Christians, so that we are better parents, and we are better in the society. Yet most of us will come into church, attend service, leave, go pick our children from the Sunday school area or wherever they are, whichever class they are attending, and leave. And not very many of us will even volunteer their service when there's a call to serve, like for example in the church, because we are working under the shadow of shame and feeling guilty and feeling judged. Mine really is a call to leadership, that God would give you the wisdom to know how to handle this group of people, because we have needs. Our children have needs, yet we don't quite feel that the church has been able to meet that need. Think about a single mom who is raising a son whose father is out of the picture. What can she do for that child from the male perspective. How can she raise that boy to be that man that she would want him to be? Because there are only certain things we as women can impart on our children. So this single mom who has not anyone else to turn to, maybe from the family and in the society and the workplace and what have you, maybe they have no one they can pick out to be a good example of the son. What is the church able to do for such a mom? Because then even in church, it's hard for me as a single mom to walk up to a couple and say, hey, I would kindly request that your husband be a support system for my son. It is very awkward, very unlikely, even from our point. And even on the couple's side, I wonder what would cross their mind once they know they're dealing with a single parent. A couple of things would go off. And so to protect us from that kind of shame and hurdle, what is the church able to do? My call really is to the church that unfortunately the pandemic of single parenting is growing and we are not going anywhere. Yet it's a group in the church that's growing by the day and their needs are not quite met. We have people walking in and out of church with bitterness and anger and unforgiveness, but because the experience they receive from the pulpit at the pew when they are seated is not the same as a fellowship of sitting down. And I say this because I'm comparing what that experience looked like when I attended marriage events when I was married. That experience in that enclosed room when you're having a dinner or a breakfast together and some sort of fellowship and other activities is so intimate and close. It causes the couple to come together. There's a level of accountability also from the couple's side, but you don't quite get that experience when you're seated on a pew on Sunday listening to the preacher from the pulpit. It's a very different experience. And so what would it look like if the church would allow itself to have some sort of fellowship with this group of people, get to understand them a little more? And we're not talking about offering financial help. We are just talking about fellowship. I've been a single parent for over a decade now. And of all those years, there's only one church that I have attended that actually had something to offer in terms of a fellowship. In fact, we called it Single Parents Fellowship in that church. And it was an amazing experience. And these are some of the benefits I got from that fellowship. Now, one, that the leadership had created as a platform like that caused even the church to warm up to us. At least we felt less judged, we felt more accepted. Just by virtue of the leadership creating such a space for us, it really did lift that feeling of, I feel judged, I don't feel comfortable. We were very comfortable in that church, and that was an amazing thing. The second positive that I got from fellowshipping in that single parents fellowship in this church was that we created relationships. We were able to have closer relationships and because we understand each other. Personally, I was actually able to get 2 new friends from that fellowship. And to this day, we continue to pray together. We continue to call each other, check on each other, visit with each other, encourage each other, even in the path of walking a Christian life. So it made a lot of sense to be in that group where we were able to connect and have friendships. And those friendships have caused us to also hold each other accountable, so that now I cannot just run rampant and do whatever I want to do out there, because these other ladies are watching me. We are having a conversation. They're asking what's going on. We hold each other accountable and we don't get into a spiral and keep getting into deeper and deeper into trouble. One other positive that came out of that single parents fellowship was that we were each other's peer counselors, so that if someone came into the group and they were struggling with unforgiveness, then it became very easy for us to reason together and give godly wisdom from a place of somebody else maybe who has gone through the same struggle and now they know better and they're doing differently. And so it becomes a place where you know that you're struggling with something, but the person who is talking to you has gone through it. They're talking from a place of knowledge and experience. And so it makes much more sense, so that what they say becomes of very high value and you're able to pick it up. And then knowing that we are doing this in a Christian setting. And so it is very unlikely that advice will be offered that is against the word of God. And so it's a very safe place. So that is one thing that I found very useful in terms of sitting in that kind of group. And lastly, I would say one other benefit of that single parents fellowship was what happened to our children. We had events that brought our children together. Remember that the children of single parented homes have a different experience in life. compared to those who were born and raised in nuclear families. And so they would have different questions, different experiences, different worries and concerns about life. We cannot assume that they are in the youth ministry or they're in the Sunday school ministry, and so therefore all their needs are met. Their concerns are certainly different from the children who are raised and brought up in a complete home with a father and a mother. There are two main reasons for this video. One is to just challenge the church and request kindly that the church would stop and realize that this group of people, unfortunately, is here, cannot be wished away, and is growing by the day, and that their needs are unique. We have congregants walking in and out of church with a load of anger, a load of unforgiveness, a load of all these things that are weighing them down and interfering with the way that we do Christianity. I would encourage the leadership in church to just draw in this group of people, single dads and single moms, in this category, and just listen to them and see, does the church really meet your need? Is there anything that you expect of us? I'd be very excited to work with church leadership in terms of offering my insight in terms of what this kind of fellowship will look like. I'm really available and can be reached on the email address below, and I'm happy to take a virtual call or have a physical meeting. Now, on the other hand, speaking to the single parents, when we feel that the church is not doing enough for us, they are too quiet about us, they are not recognizing us, they're not even talking about us in church, what is our responsibility? Because we must be involved in this conversation. And this is what my call is. Let us meet the church halfway. Let us have this conversation with the church, because it is very unfair. Let's think about it. When you consider your pastoral team, they are most likely, a good number of them, married. And so this reality of single parenting is not their reality. And therefore it becomes very unfair for us to sit back and say the church doesn't do this for us, it doesn't speak to us, it doesn't help us with our children, we don't know where to go for help, and yet they don't know what our expectations are, what our realities are. It is actually impossible for them to meet that need when they don't know about it. They are oblivious about it, and it's because it's not their reality. And so single parents, let's be involved in a conversation with our church leaders, and our church leaders, be open, because this group of people, this group of part of your congregation is growing, and they will get to a place where we cannot be ignored any longer. And to begin to heal the society, I believe this conversation ought to happen. This space needs to be covered so that we are healed, our children are healed, and our society is also healed.